Okay, it says I'm live. I'm just going to verify that I'm live. Go back in here. Not showing up just yet. There, it shows I'm live. Woohoo. Okay, there we go. I'm just testing a platform I called StreamYard. You'll see it up here. It's a really cool tool. It can, in its basic version, it'll allow me to do up to 20 hours of lives a month, and it allows me to join other people in and create connections and really cool stuff. So, so living your best life. Self-mastery is essential. It's a term I talk about all the time, but I'm seeing it more and more and more in everything that I'm being asked to do. I'm being asked to lean in to the things that make me uncomfortable, that are part of my self-definition, which I talked about in my other live this morning. Essentially, we've become entangled in a whole web of beliefs that a lot of them are not even true. They're basically closing us down, putting us a cage around us, and forcing us not to feel like we have any control or power in our life. So that's a really nasty situation, because it's a catch-22. We just get trapped in, oh, I can't do that. What would my priest think? What would my religion think? What would my grandma think? And all this kind of stuff. We won't be sexual with a partner until marriage or whatever. But if we do, we then are guilty and ashamed about it because we were exploring in high school or university or whatever. And then you're going to have traumas that show up in your life, and traumas will smash you. It'll be like, oh shit, I just got attacked and I didn't want to be attacked, or I didn't want to be sexual with this person, or I changed my mind after the fact, and because all my friends are telling me that I was raped or some crazy thing. Or you'll lose a business, or your kids won't want to talk to you again, or you'll have a divorce, or you'll have all these things that show up that are helping you learn your lessons, learn where you're bound, and these kind of things, and we'll become victim to them. And when we become victim to them, it's like a straitjacket. It's like, oh, I can't do this. I'm a divorced man and I won't find a woman for the next 10 years of my life because that's what everybody else says in the community, and blah, 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 blah. Well, do you want to live with a straitjacket on? And I'm going to tell you right now, it's a choice. So leaning into things that are hard will reward you. And especially the things that we have some belief inside of ourselves, or some trigger or scared or whatever, and thinks is going to kill us, will give you the biggest reward you've ever found. How to describe it? So I've been speaking in my lives lately about my ex-girlfriend Bonnie, and she made some claims, and now she's done a video to speak about her choices and the societal programs that made her seek the solace of other women that were wounded, and then they all projected their shit on me and turned it into something it wasn't. To lean into that, and to not hate Bonnie or want to harm her for this thing she did, or the women that were involved at the time, and this was almost 8 years ago now, to sit with her and reflect for her and say, I see your wounded child, and I see she was angry, and I see she didn't want what I told her, and she even reflected that she was running away from having a hard conversation with her husband. I've learned that with my ex-wife since then too. Essentially, sorry if you can hear the noise, it sounds like there's steam cleaning the floor in the hallway. This is the hardest thing. So when Bonnie came back to me after the 10th or 12th time of going back and forth and wanted me to coach her and stuff like that, I knew there was something bigger in this for us. A reflection of self that could help her see herself. Not that it was my job to do it or whatever. I just knew that something out of integrity had been done, and that there was a learning for both of us. And I reflected and I reflected and I reflected until one day she came into the consciousness and self-awareness and self-mastery that was. So that's her leaning into her discomfort, me leaning into my discomfort. Another good example is I did a cold plunge on Sunday of this week, which is 3 days ago. And I posted on Facebook, and it was scary for me. I went in and did something I did not feel comfortable doing. And I was like, oh, I'm going to freak out and I'm going to run away and I'm going to be scared and I'll pass out or some crazy thing. And none of those things happened. So I leaned into it and I felt it. And I grew from that discomfort and facing my discomfort and not feeling happy and feeling unsafe and all these kinds of things. I grew from it and I didn't die. My body felt like it was going to fight or flight or die, or I was going to get killed by this experience and the cold water, or I was going to fall down and fall off the rocks and hit my head and blah, blah, blah. All stories in my head. None of those things happened. Yeah, I slipped and fell down on coming out afterwards or whatever, and I recommended we get a rope for next time. But I came out, my body was screaming, my skin was bright red, everybody else was in the same situation. But it wasn't bad. I discovered something in myself. I discovered that it didn't kill me and it wasn't hurting me, and my fear was just a feeling. And by leaning into that fear, I gained confidence in myself. And I find this every day. Everything that I lean into, I can remember a bunch of years ago, I had a client doing IT work for them or whatever, and I was about to buy $8,000 worth of phone equipment for them, and I was insisting that they pay me half up front so that I could purchase this equipment and not be exposed if they change their mind and all this kind of stuff. And the guy who was a middle manager, he had the check sitting on his desk, and he fought me for an hour until I finally got to the point and I stood up to him. And normally management or leaders or whatever, I'd just collapse and feel uncomfortable. I went up against him. I said, sorry, I'll go to your boss if I have to, but if you don't pay me, the project's not going to happen. And his boss was expecting the project to happen. And all of a sudden he knew he had no power against me, because all he wanted to do was coerce me into his dominance. And he didn't lose any dominance. I didn't say, F you, you asshole, or whatever. I finally just coerced him in the same way he was trying to coerce me into giving me the check. And the project went off amazingly. He was so happy. I completed probably 30 phone conversion from an old phone system to a new one in 6 hours, less than 6 hours. There was a bunch of cleanup of something to do with the phone lines afterwards that had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with the phone company. But I felt so much more power in myself by that. So every time I lean into something that I feel uncomfortable about, or is a cage, or makes me feel that I have no choice in, I lean into it, and it gives me a version of my best life. It gives me a new change. The stuff I talked about recently with Bonnie, I leaned into having some really hard conversations with her, and we both got rewarded from that. I use the term self-mastery above too. And self-mastery is basically knowing yourself and how you deal with yourself when you feel uncomfortable. And are you accountable? Are you self-responsible? Or do you project and point fingers and say, fuck off and get out of my face and all these kind of things? That is a reaction in your body. It's a trigger. It's a fight or flight mechanism. If you can stand in fight or flight when